We elected a Donald Trump in 2016.
Right.
And the CIA colluded and conspired to destroy this man.
And now we've reelected Donald Trump, and now he has the opportunity, and he has and should have the authority.
Wow, yeah. So
should have the authority to do everything necessary in order to make sure that doesn't happen
shatter the CIA
again.
and splinter it into the wind.
Yeah, I guess I'm old-fashioned here, and I've said it a few times this evening, but I do believe that there are serious, patriotic, hardworking men and women in these agencies who committed their life to defend us and defend our country. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we have enemies. We have enemies abroad who want to destroy our way of life. The Chinese Communist Party, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Putin in Russia, the North Koreans, and their enablers around the world, including Sunni jihadists and Shiite jihadist groups who want to destroy us and bring 9/11s over and over again. We need people who are going to defend us, and brave patriots have stood up for decades to defend this country. And those people are still hard at work. The problem is, and you're absolutely right, there are political appointments that have been made of people in these agencies who have undermined our democracy and undermined our elected officials. There are elected officials who've come in and have made terrible decisions for our country and for our people that have cost lives and cost treasure. And I think we should welcome this administration holding all of these agencies accountable, doing what they do, and let the Democrats freak out and let the radical left freak out. That's fine. Changes need to be made. I guess at the end of the day, I'm not a rip it all down kind of person.
Rebuild it.
I think you're going to be left with no institutions to defend us. And I think our enemies abroad are just waiting for the opportunity to strike a blow at a divided America, a weakened America.
And I completely agree. And I blame the CIA, the FBI, and the other intelligence agencies. How about when Eric Ciaramella filed that complaint against Donald Trump and Vindman brought it forward? This is CIA agents lying to the American people about what Joe Biden was doing with Burisma. And you know what? I know it's only surface level, but I'm going to say it again. The American people have a right to know to a great degree what is going on with our government and why we are involved in foreign countries. Joe Biden flies to Ukraine. His son's involved in an energy company, largely, presumably having to do with the Gazprom gas monopoly, as I bring it up 800 million times. So the U.S., through the CIA, with the CIA counterterrorism director on the board of Burisma, along with the president's son, is trying to operate in what they call American interests, despite the fact the American people reject it outright. And when Joe Biden flies over there, right after his son called saying, please help, the prosecutor in Ukraine is investigating the founder of the company that we're using as a CIA front to go up against the gas monopoly because we want to build a pipeline through Qatar and Turkey. I'm not going to get into all of it. Let me put it this way. The American people do not want to be involved in Ukraine, do not want the vice president flying to Ukraine and offering $1 billion in loan guarantees for any reason. And no matter what the American people say, they keep doing it. And when Donald Trump got elected by the will of the people through the electoral system, the CIA, not just through the whistleblowers falsely accusing Trump of wrongdoing, but through these intel officers who lied to the press. And now the email's been released where they said they were doing it to assist Joe Biden with a talking point during a debate. This is the intelligence agencies conspiring and committing sedition against the American people. If I live in my house and I want to operate in my house as I see fit, police should not be able to walk into my house and tell me I have to live the way they want because I'm wrong and stupid. The American people voted for a secure border for our jobs. We are tired of the extraction. We are tired of our jobs being sent to China and to Mexico. We are tired of seeing Michigan be gutted and destroyed. We are tired of seeing, as Ro Khanna described it, this leftist globalist dream, a multicultural dream of bringing in all of these people to create this multicultural utopia, which failed. That's Ro Khanna's words, and it left the middle class gutted. But for some reason, my entire life, no matter how many times we said no more war, no matter how many times we said stop sending our jobs overseas, they kept doing it. And then Donald Trump gets elected. Why? Well, Bernie Sanders was the first choice for a lot of people. He was the guy saying, we got to secure the border. It's the Koch brothers who want the free trade. They want the illegal immigration to come in so they can pay pennies on the dollar. Donald Trump was saying a lot of similar things. In the 2015-2016 cycle, the media was comparing Trump and Bernie. Bernie got crushed by the DNC. They forced him out. He bends the knee and gives into the machine, and now he makes no sense. And Donald Trump wins. He wasn't supposed to win. So what happens? Intel agents conspire against Donald Trump, along with powerful interests at law firms in D.C., to destroy what the American people voted for. And that's why I agree. There are men and women at the CIA and FBI who are deep patriotic Americans. I know they exist. I've met some of them. I've met them years ago. I talked to a guy who worked at Intel in D.C., and he said, you know, there are a lot of people in these departments, in these agencies, who love Trump and want to see him succeed. And then I said, but is your department being run by these deep state bureaucratic elements? And the response I got was, it's the same inside as it is outside. And at the time, woke was law. Nobody wanted to speak up. So the people at the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and these other, you know, there's all the other intelligence agencies, of which I believe there's 17, the people who liked Trump wouldn't speak up in his defense. Certainly, I think many of those people are good, but here's the problem now. Trump's in office. He's going to have to go to each one of these agencies and say, for one, with the FBI, he's looking to terminate a bunch of them. Why? What is it, like 40% of FBI agents were hunting down J6ers? I mean, that is absolutely insane, considering we had thousands of far leftists across this country ransacking everything in the George Floyd riots. Trump sent out a memo that got leaked, or a memo was sent out, I think it was from Trump, saying, we don't believe you can uphold the Constitution and do your duty because of the biased political actions you took during the Biden administration. I completely agree. Trump's going to have to, that's why they said, tell us who was involved in this. They turned over 5,000 names. Judges and Democrats are desperately trying to stop that. Why? These institutions are majority deeply corrupt. You either have the banality of evil or evil. There certainly may be good patriotic FBI agents who sat by and watched as corrupt institutions went after the president in the most corrupt ways and hunted down nonviolent protesters. You want to complain about the violent people in J6? Please do so. I think if you hit a cop, you deserve jail. But what about the people who are walking around in the grass? What about Owen Schroyer? So those FBI agents go after those people while other agents sat back and watched. That is not the kind of person I want upholding my Constitution, or at least pretending to. Donald Trump's going to have to go into these institutions in whatever way he can, shatter them, splinter them into the wind, and maybe we can rebuild them. Maybe if we get Pam Bondi and Kash Patel start going through and firing all of these people that were complicit in this corruption and the targeting of the American people, maybe then we can actually have a resurgence of deep patriotic Americans in intel we can trust. But let me just finalize this January 6th point. The American people voted for Donald Trump. It is a fact that intel officers lied to the press for the purpose of benefiting Joe Biden, lied about the Hunter Biden laptop story, which would have benefited Donald Trump, lied about what Trump's involvement was in the Burisma scandal because Trump discovered Joe Biden broke the law with a quid pro quo. And CIA agents conspired to blame Trump for that and impeach him, damaging his image. The FBI raided his home over a spattering of random documents in memo boxes that he had, while ignoring that Joe Biden did substantially worse. Admittedly, Joe Biden said on recording he did it to make money. He said, I want these documents to make a book so I can make money. And his ghostwriter tried to delete the evidence. The FBI did nothing to go after these people. The FBI did not go after the far leftists who firebombed the White House. No. The FBI went after the people who protested in D.C., angry that the intelligence agencies were trying to gut this country. These people are evil. We live under a deep state bureaucracy, or we did, where these people say, you Americans are stupid, you're morons, and if we actually enacted policy the way you wanted it, China or whatever country would crush us, and then we'd get 9/11s all over again, whatever it may be. So the simple point is, the American people should be the ones dictating what we want. We should not have a secret unelected bureau deciding how the government should be run, using the press and lying to the American people so they can do whatever they want. Because as it turns out, through USAID, the State Department, and other NGOs, they are basically using the system to their benefit while they extract from us our value, our working class, our morals, our cultures, and it leaves us with nothing. We are left now with a listless generation of lazy individuals who don't want to work, who are supporting communism, who are so overweight they're injecting themselves with a drug because they can't stop eating. This country has become deeply sick, and now for once in my life, I see something truly amazing. RFK Jr. And what happens? The entirety of the Democrats try to shut him down. Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth. This has been absolutely fantastic what we're seeing. And now Trump's going to have to go in and make sure he shatters out the corruption. And maybe then, as I said, he can rebuild it. Sorry, everybody. Rant over.
Hey, Tim, let me just say one thing. We're talking about 80-20. I mean, I agree with 80% of what you said. We can quibble over the 20. But I think the important thing to focus on, in addition to that, is we have real enemies abroad who want to destroy our country and our way of life. And they are, and let's just not whitewash this. There's Vladimir Putin in Moscow. There's Ali Khamenei in Tehran. Right? There's the Kim family in Pyongyang. And most importantly, in Beijing is Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. Okay? What I as an American want to do is I want to support allies who are willing to fight and die in their own defense against common enemies. Okay? I don't think there's going to be much dispute, maybe there will be, that Israel's a good ally, a good democratic ally. It's fighting against common enemies. It's not asking for U.S. troops. Right? We can talk about military aid. I think you and I probably agree we can taper that off over the years, even though at the end of the day, the Israelis are spending all of that military aid in the United States on U.S. companies and U.S. jobs. But I think Israel's a great ally, and I wish we had more allies like Israel around the world fighting the Islamic Republic of Iran that has killed Americans, maimed Americans, taken Americans hostage. And if the Israelis are going to fight against our common enemy using their men and women, their boys and girls, thumbs up, great ally. So this will be more controversial with you, given what you said. With everything you said about the corruption in Joe Biden and Ukraine, the Ukrainians are fighting against Vladimir Putin, and it's cost huge number of Ukrainian lives, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men and women, against a brutal enemy that has used force without compunction and deliberately targeted Ukrainian civilians. And the Ukrainians have been fighting the Russian military, an enemy of the United States, with no American soldiers. No American soldiers have lost their lives. That's not a bad ally.
That's a bit manipulative, I would say.
You think so? Why?
Well, there are American individuals who are operating as volunteers, and there's U.S. Special Forces on the ground. So to a large degree, I think it's fair to say U.S. boots are not on the ground in an official capacity, but U.S. personnel are operating in Ukraine as private contractors and volunteers, and that's just to get around the fact that Congress hasn't declared war since World War II. So when the U.S. is providing the weapons, the intelligence, and telling them when to press the buttons, but we're using the Ukrainian people as drafted cannon fodder, I wouldn't necessarily praise what's going on.
Well, no, that's fair enough. And we can have a whole discussion about, and I think it is about time for the Ukrainian war, long past the time for the Ukrainian war to end. And I think Donald Trump is taking exactly the right approach by saying to Vladimir Putin, we can do a deal. I got Zelensky on board. Do a deal with me or I'm going to punch you in the face, quote unquote, right? But at the end of the day, I don't believe any Americans have died fighting in Ukraine. And that is the kind of ally that we want. So if the Ukrainians and the Israelis are going to fight American enemies, and we're not going to lose American men and women in that fight the way we did in Iraq and in Afghanistan and Vietnam and other wars, I think at the end of the day...
Why would we want Ukraine as an ally?
I'd rather have Ukraine as an ally fighting Russia and preventing the Russians from taking over Eastern Europe, from taking over Poland and Lithuania.
Why would Russia go near Poland or Lithuania?
Well, Putin has said very clearly, and he says it at length, and he says it often, that he wants to rebuild and resurrect the Russian Empire.
Sure.
And the Russian Empire does not stop with Ukraine. It goes further. And so, look, I can't read Putin's mind, or as George Bush once famously said, I can't see into his soul. I have no idea what his ambitions are, except what he has stated. And I'm not a student of history, but I'm an observer of history. And I believe when brutal dictators say something, take them seriously, and he said it, and we should take him seriously. And I do not think we want to send U.S. troops because we will be obligated under treaty to defend our NATO allies under Article 5 if Putin moves into NATO. And God forbid we do that, because then American men and women will be dying on the plains of Europe.
I got to say, I don't see indication of that happening right now.
I don't think it's happening right now. Number one, because I think the Russian military has taken a serious beating from the Ukrainians.
Yeah. But when were they ever going to go into Lithuania or these other countries?
So if Putin had done what Putin had intended to do and what his intelligence community told him he could do, if he had moved in and taken Kyiv in 3 days and moved into Ukraine without a significant cost, if you take him at his word, I'm not saying you should, but if you take him at his word, he was going to go further. And at some point, he was going to be on the NATO border. And then the question would be, and that
he's on the NATO border. Oh, NATO border.
No, and he would have moved into NATO. And at some point,
Kaliningrad borders two of these countries as it is.
Look, at some point we would have
and the Baltic.
No, I hear you, but what we want to avoid at all costs, okay, is an invasion of a NATO country that obligates us under treaty to send U.S. men and women to defend these countries under Article 5.
Sure, then
we want to avoid that.
Then what we should have done is not gotten involved in a Ukrainian conflict in which we are not allies, nor are they in NATO. They're not in NATO. They're not EU. And all we've done is convinced Russia, as they've now stated over and over again, they're at war with NATO already because of our involvement. It is the U.S. military, weapons, and intelligence under the asking Ukrainian to press the button guys that sunk the Russian flagship in the Black Sea. That was the U.S. and NATO that did that. That wasn't Ukraine. And Russia knows it. So how about if the U.S. is involved in this, I should say U.S., I want to say NATO, I want to say the EU, is involved in this fight over Ukraine's future, whether it's going to be an EU, Schengen zone state, et cetera, or it's going to be Russian Trade Federation. When Russia says, I will not allow NATO expansion on my border to this degree, we say, well, they're not an ally of ours. Why are we going to get into a war which would create the exact scenario saying we should avoid? If Putin went in and seized the Donbass and Mariupol and Luhansk and all that going down to Crimea, and he took control of Crimea, largely was the motivating factor because the U.S. influence in Ukraine and them joining the EU would cut off Russia from their Black Sea port. If we didn't get involved in this at all, the war would have been over, as you said, in 3 days. And Russia, sure, maybe in some hypothetical scenario would try and make a move on Lithuania or something. I think it's strange considering they already border Poland, and I think is it Estonia with Kaliningrad and the Baltic. I don't see why they would make that military move directly confronting NATO. If they moved into Ukraine and we did nothing, there'd be no war, there'd be no death. But instead, what we're dealing with now is this goes well beyond just Russia's expansion and some noble effort by the West to stop an evil dictator. Zelensky's not having elections. He won't have them. He's saying he's not going to do it. You've got Joe Biden committing crimes in Ukraine. You've got questions about Hunter Biden and Mykola Zlochevsky's involvement in the crimes they committed and why the U.S. government was involved in stopping a prosecutor from investigating corrupt elements. And this goes back to great geopolitics. And it's not so simple to say illegal, legal, right, wrong. What you have is power structures competing for power. The Western, Russia and its allies, Russia wants to sell gas to Europe. It makes a lot of money. Germany wants to buy it. The U.S. doesn't want them to because it gives Russia more power. So the U.S. and NATO is trying to offset their control, sending natural gas through Ukraine. The U.S. wants to do it. Russia's already doing it. So the U.S. was trying to gain control politically of Ukraine so they can put controls on Gazprom and cut out their ability to sell gas. Then once they control Ukraine and they cut out Russia from the Black Sea, Russia's ability to sell fuel in the Mediterranean through other nations in North Africa gets shut down, and it extremely damages the Russian economy. Russia then says, we're not going to let you do it, so a war starts, and the U.S. gets involved in a conflict the American people do not want. It has created a potential for World War III. It has convinced the Russian people and the Russian government and their media that they're at war with NATO, not Ukraine, while the American media keeps lying, claiming we're not involved at all, and it's Ukraine doing it. And then you end up with the president of Ukraine refusing to hold elections, coming to the U.S., getting our Congress to fly Ukrainian flags, us spending hundreds of billions of dollars on their war under some strange guise of Putin may be Hitler. Putin is not some comic book villain. I do think he's a bit of I'll avoid swearing. He's not a good person. I'll put it that way. He's a very bad person, in my opinion. But I don't think that justifies why the U.S. is running the risk of Russia actually having an incentive to strike a NATO ally, triggering Article 5 and making us go to war. We shouldn't be involved in Ukraine. The argument is on the surface. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe the intel agencies they absolutely do hold classified information on this in this regard. But on the surface, it's largely we want cheaper gas into Europe. We want to expand the European economic bloc. Russia makes it more difficult because they control gas into Europe largely, about 24%. We can't convince Russia to drop the prices. So we tried building a pipeline through Syria. Syria said, no, we're allies with Russia. So then we destabilized the Syrian government, sent troops in without congressional approval, by the way. And I have no idea. Do you guys remember when we announced we dispatch U.S. troops into Syria? How crazy. We end up siding against their government. Their government collapses. The U.S. wants to build the pipeline. The next domino to fall is Ukraine. Let me simplify everything. There is no right, there's no wrong, there's war. They say all is fair in love and war. The issue I take is not with whether or not it's right or wrong to defeat Russia, China, Iran, or any of these other countries. The issue I take is the American people are supposed to largely decide. It's not supposed to be a nation of direct democracy where a random person just says, we should do this thing. And then you're like, bro, you have no idea what you're talking about. We're not going to do that. It's supposed to be, as the founding fathers envisioned, we elect representatives who keep us informed to the best of our abilities. They have the SCIF, they have classified intelligence, and they try their best to explain to us why we have to do certain things. Instead, what we've got is a largely corrupt state of permanently elected bureaucrat politicians who raise money from special interest groups, never seem to lose elections, intelligence agencies that when we actually get a popular president, defy the will of the people to go against them. If this is what we are fighting to preserve, we're burning down the country and the world as it is. So we've got ourselves an impasse. We can say this corrupt nation of bureaucracy garbage and self-infliction and corruption should exist for the sake of itself. Or we should say the American people should get a grip on what's going on. We should reassess our priorities, not be involved in these foreign wars. And that may result in Russia gaining more economic power. It may result in China making a move on Taiwan. I don't see how we are served as a country by having open borders, weak generations who don't want to do work, don't have kids, and then we dump our funds into ridiculous USAID programs. We have intelligence agencies backing all of that up. Democrat politicians panicked that our slush fund into ridiculous gender studies NGOs. I mean, this is abject corruption. I would liken what the United States is right now to a Jackson Pollock painting. No one can make heads or tails of why any of it is happening or why it should exist. We need to get a hold on all of this. And it starts with saying, secure our borders, bring back our jobs, have a moral resurgence. We want people to get back to work. We want them to understand the value of hard work. We want people to have families. We want them to understand what it means to have moral tradition and believe in the American culture and the American dream. Once we can reassess and rebuild what America is supposed to be, maybe then we can be a player on the grand stage. The way I see it right now is with Donald Trump and with Biden, Clinton, Obama, whatever it is, you have two visions of what the world is going to be. And the Obama, Biden, Clinton system that was being built was America doesn't matter. It's an economic bloc. We are going to build power. And effectively, they created an extra national entity of military intelligence power. Donald Trump's system is the United States is breaking apart. It's not going to be sustainable. And eventually, we will get World War III, most likely. And the war that I blame Biden for in Eastern Europe, which is exacerbating this. Not to mention it's spreading with North Korea getting involved now. We have the makings of potential World War III. Donald Trump's vision seems to be, let's make America functional. Get our young people back to work. Work is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Build up a great nation, build culture. Once we are strong, we can build powerful economic ties around the world, which can prevent the collapse of these nations into war.
Yeah, but there's one other element of Trump's strategy, which I think is worth highlighting. And I think this is why a lot of Americans voted for him, because he absolutely believes in peace through strength. Strength at home, strength abroad. And I think Americans saw that under Biden, completely agree with you, under Obama, we were heading to World War III, right? The world was unraveling. Our enemies were emboldened, whether it was Eastern Europe, the Middle East, or the Indo-Pacific. And I think what Trump has come in and said is, don't mess with me in the United States of America. I don't want to go to war. I don't want to send American soldiers abroad, but I will use American military power if you test me. And I think that's exactly the message we should be sending. Not that we are withdrawing from the world, not that we are not going to be involved in the world, but we're not going to waste blood and treasure over wars that don't advance the American interest. But we are absolutely a powerful country with a powerful economy and a powerful military. So dictators around the world, Vladimir Putin, Ali Khamenei, the Kim family, Xi Jinping,
Zelensky.
Well, listen, we can talk about Zelensky, but at the end of the day, I don't put Zelensky in the axis of aggressors, right? I think there are four main members of the axis of aggressors, and they are Iran, China, Russia, and North Korea, right? And then we've got a bunch of allies. Some are great allies, some are awful allies, some are imperfect allies, but at the end of the day, they're still allies. And Donald Trump is saying to the axis of aggressors, don't mess with the United States of America. And I think that's restoring pride in our country. I think it means that we don't have to fight stupid wars because they fear Donald Trump in ways that they didn't fear Joe Biden.
I agree. And I think largely this just means if we don't get a handle on what our intel agencies and our law enforcement institutions are doing, if Trump can't get confidence that they'll operate under the as to the will of the American people, we'll never get any of that. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.